Hey guys, I just vended my first Pokemon card show and I just wanted to make this video to share my experiences and all the things that I did to prep for the show. So without further ado, here is all the things that I did to prep, all the tips and tricks and everything that I brought to the show. To preface, I did a small local event and brought around $8,000 in inventory, and I had a couple of $1,000s in cash just to do buying and trading because that is the best way for you to grow your inventory. So the first thing I wanted to go over is how I source my inventory and how I source all the cards that I brought to this show. So the first thing that I would always recommend people do is take a look at their personal collections and understand, what they're willing to give up and what you're willing to sell from that collection, because that is the easiest way for you to have a starting point, to jumpstart your business. Not everyone has the largest collection to start from, but what that means is you'll have to pour in a little bit of money up front to actually get your inventory, of the right caliber to start vending these shows. I personally started with Facebook Marketplace. For me, that was the easiest and most accessible way to find some cards at a lower than market value. It's very important that you find some of these cards that are not at full market value, because then without those margins, you aren't really making a whole ton of money. So if you're trying to scale this into a business, you need to make sure that you're understanding the margins on the cards that you'll be selling. You can expect to kind of sell them at probably, depending on the size of the card, 90 to 95% of the market value at shows. If you're able to get 100, that's great. Depending on the size and the actual price of the card, it's probably more important that you get a larger margin for smaller cards. The second tip I have here is the inventory should match the size of the show that you're going to. The reason I talk about this is because having a extremely large inventory for a small local show, typically it becomes harder to move those things because people going to local shows have a smaller budget. When you go to big card shows like Collecticon and Card Party, those are shows where people bring a lot more money to actually spend. Whereas, local card shows, there are probably less foot traffic and less people willing to spend a ton of money, but that's not always the case. There's always outliers and stuff. So find your niche, make sure that you understand what part of the market that you're trying to hone in on, and just focus on that. Don't go in too many different directions. If you want to do high end, but you're going to need a lot of money to start that out. So when I first started sourcing my inventory, I was looking for around 70 to 75% market value collections. Now, what you really want to be looking for is top heavy collections and collections with a lot of liquid cards. That's not always really easy to find, especially because nowadays it's a lot more competitive of a market, and people, especially in bigger cities like where I am, it becomes a lot harder to actually find those good deals. But the consistency matters a lot here, and making sure that you're always constantly looking at Facebook Marketplace and seeing the new listings, it will go a lot further than you think. It took me over a month to actually find my first one, but once I got the ball rolling, it was actually a lot easier for me to find momentum and find more and more people. So yeah, and also make sure you're building a connection with that person. In the future, if they start ripping more and they're selling their collection again and they want to kind of reinvest that, having you as a contact point for them to start to move their collection again and then reset will actually help you a lot in the future. And I've done multiple deals with the same person where they just, are able to find their packs at lower prices, and then they just rip through them. They sell me the duplicates at a percentage of the market value, and then it's a good cycle. So make sure you're connecting with these people. Make sure you're very fair, but also just very polite, and just have fun with it. In terms of the inventory that I brought to the show, I brought about 3 binders. One being a $1 binder that I was able to fill up with a bunch of just EX cards and things that are worth under $1, but margins are bigger, so I will slowly just sell through those. That's just my plan. The $2 to $10 binder is just filled with a bunch of illustration rares I was able to pick up from a local collector. And the final binder was a top loader binder that I wasn't able to fit into my showcase. The bigger raw singles was one of my cases, and then the other case I had was just slabs. I will add on top of this that preparation for the show really matters, and I'll touch on this in a little bit, but if you're able to price out your cards, you're able to do quicker deals, have more and more movement and velocity in a lot of your deals, and that will actually help you scale in the future. So these are great tips for scaling your skill set and just becoming a lot more comfortable in the vending space. When you're pricing, I would highly suggest just pricing fairly and just being around the market value as much as possible so that you can work and negotiate from there. If you are into the card for more and you need more money out of it, you can price it and just be transparent. Just be polite and open to offers when you're doing this, because your reputation will start to become more and more important as you do these shows. So let's move on to some of the things that I brought to the show. I personally would call these the required items that you should definitely be bringing. Number one, tablecloth. It's very important to actually look professional, and if you're just vending off of a bare table, it kind of looks less approachable, and being approachable and having foot traffic at your table is very important, because the more eyes you get, the more sales you're potentially getting, and it's just very important for sale velocity. The second thing is showcases. Showcases are how you will be displaying your raw cards and your slabs aside from binders. It's very important to I would highly suggest not just putting your cards on the table. It's pretty big security risk, especially when you're starting to deal with bigger and higher end cards. And it just, again, it pushes that professional look as well. So you're able to create an inviting, open environment. You're looking professional, you're looking great, and it helps build confidence as well. The next thing I would say that's required if you're selling sealed product is the shelf. The biggest problem with sealed is that it takes up a lot of space. And so a sealed shelf will actually help consolidate that space and allow you to be able to display and showcase more of your actual cards that you're selling as well. So you're able to kind of double what you can be showing and selling based on having a shelf for all of your sealed. The next thing I will say is price tags. So I personally am a big fan of actually pricing out your inventory. Some people might have different opinions on that. I think it's important because it helps your velocity, especially if you don't have someone with you. It becomes a lot harder to actually look up all the comps of everything. Once you start to add more and more deals and more cards within deals and different trades, it becomes a lot to actually keep in your mind. And so having that sticker price just there based on what you paid for the card and what the market is, you can start your negotiations from those price tags. So it becomes a lot quicker, a lot easier. It'll help you guys determine if you guys are very far off just to start, which is great. The last thing I would say is required for scaling a vending business is bringing cash to the show. So being able to not only give people change for what they're buying from your table, but also buying actual cards at a percentage is one of your biggest assets as a vendor. So when people come to shows, they typically expect to only get a percentage of the market value if they're selling their cards for cash or trade value. This is one of the benefits of vending at a show, and it helps kind of cover the cost of all the travel expenses, all of the table costs, and the overhead costs that it takes for a vendor to actually show up. So you can use this to your advantage, and this is the incentive for pretty much all vendors. And if you're not taking advantage of the opportunity to buy at a percentage, it's definitely going to hurt you in the long run. So one of the most important things I would say is a nice to have is content creation equipment. So being able to build your brand can give you a bunch of benefits. Once you start to build trust, people will start to approach you with collections. They'll trust you more and more and want to do more and more deals with you, and they'll even give you a deal even if you're offering less than someone else, because they trust you, they support you, and they want you to succeed because they feel like they have that personal connection with you. Building a following online is going to be one of your biggest assets, and I would highly suggest taking advantage of the potential content that you can make and all of this stuff, because people just love following it. People love watching videos and vendor POVs and stuff like that, and if you could build your brand from that, it's going to be a massive edge for you in the future. So piggybacking off of that, I would say maybe even having a banner or QR codes for your social medias will help a lot. One thing that I did in my first show is giving out packs to people who followed me, and it actually worked out pretty well. I got, a couple hundred followers. I just bought a bunch of like Korean and Japanese packs just to hand out, and especially when kids came by, I was able to hand them out just for free anyways. And it was just a way for me to spark conversation and build foot traffic around my table. And it was just fun, giving back to the community and just being a part of the community has been the most fun for me. And yeah, I highly suggest you do it and, just have fun with it. So moving on to kind of miscellaneous tips and tricks. The number one thing I will say is having someone there with you to help you out in times of a lot of foot traffic and a lot of traffic at your table is very, very helpful. If you wanted to go to the bathroom during the show, get some food, or just take a look around at some of the other vendor tables, you'll be able to do that. Otherwise, you'll kind of be locked down to your table. You won't be able to make connections with other vendors. There's a lot of upsides to having someone help out, and it's just more fun to have that social interaction and, someone there to help you out. So I'd highly suggest bringing someone if you can. Another tip I have is, after looking at my strategy after my first show, I noticed that I was trying to do too much and I was trading for too much. So now I have a very sporadic inventory, and it's going to be a little bit harder to move, but it's a lesson that I learned. So try to find your niche and just dig very deep. Don't try to do too much. So you can get into raw cards, Japanese, English, you can get into high-end slabs, low-end slabs, PSA 9s. Find your niche and stick to it. Just keep in mind that raw cards typically move faster because collectors will always have binders and typically will collect those more than graded cards. And graded cards just have a higher barrier to entry and they just cost more. So just keep that in mind. You're able to have smaller margins on graded cards, but that also means you'll be moving them less. So just keep that in mind when you're choosing your niche. Just find what you have the most interest in and just stick to it. If you know that market better than anyone else, it gives you that edge. And when you're actually looking into the market, it doesn't feel like work. It's just something that you do naturally and you just enjoy so much. So you're gonna be able to excel in that once you do it. So that's my advice for your niche picking. And if you don't know right now, that's okay. There's a lot of time for you to be able to develop those instincts and just experiences, and just pay attention to what makes you the most excited. And when you're looking up some of these cards, like, what is the most fun to you? And that's what I suggest just picking. So similar to buying at shows, I will say also make sure that you're trading as well. You're able to make double margins on some of the cards. Just keep in mind that the cards that you do take in, you want to make sure that they're liquid and you're able to move them. If you're not able to move them very fast, I would say it's probably not worth picking them up. Just be okay saying no to some trades, because if you're not able to move it within, I would say, around a month or a couple shows, it's going to be dead stock and dead money, and it's going to be even harder for you to reinvest that money back into your business. And the last tip I have is network constantly. So anyone who comes to your table, just greet them, say hello. If you make a deal, just get their name, introduce yourself, just be someone in the community that they can see and come back to whenever they want. And also vendors, other vendors, and that connection that you have with them can compound over time. And when you start to build connections with other vendors, it makes it a lot easier and less stressful to move certain cards around that have been sitting around in your case. Maybe someone else has people that like these niche cards or vintage cards or something that you have a lot harder time actually moving. So I would say just make sure that you're connecting with these people and just, be friendly and make some friends, because they can help you out in the future big time. So yeah, this is after a lot of time and effort just trying to understand the vending scene, but also just things that I've learned from my first show. This year, I'm looking to dig super deep into this. I'm just looking to send it, honestly, and I'm just gonna see where I end up. So follow along if you have a similar dream or you just wanna see some Pokemon content. I'll be pumping out the content as much as I can as I do these shows and just updating my strategy as I go along. So I definitely don't have everything figured out. So if you have anything you agree or disagree with, just leave it in the comment section below and we can talk about it.